Hello, this is Michael McCarthy. In this video, we're going to take a look at using the new camera sequencer in 3ds Max 2015, Extension 2. In Extension 2, we introduced the new camera sequencer to enable people to preview and render out sequences of cameras very easily. You can see in this scene what we have is a simple character that comes in, kind of drops down, and then points out towards the camera here. Now, we have a couple of different cameras that we'd like to set up for a camera sequence for this character. And if we go into the perspective view, we'll see how these come into play. So if I select the first camera, you can see maybe this would be one for when the character is dropping in. Maybe this would be one that we'd use when they're kind of looking back. And finally, we have a third one for the final frames where the character is kind of looking out and posing for the final pose. Now, to add these all to our camera sequencer, what we do is go to the rendering menu and choose state sets. And from here, you'll see a new sequencer menu. You can click on sequencer mode, and you can see that the sequencer pops down into the bottom underneath the timeline so that you can access it and you can add your new tracks. Now, there are a couple of different pieces to this UI that you can see. We have this little section that you can kind of drag left and right. That'll make the track size bigger or smaller. I usually like to adjust this so that it lines up with the timeline pretty easily, just like that. Depending on what you have docked left or right, the timeline might be in a different position. Now, we've built the sequencer on the state sets technology because this is our render pass technology, and very often when you create a sequence of cameras, you're going to want to render them out with additional render passes or render elements. Maybe you want to use some of the token system in order to render your frames out or other things like that. Or maybe in your camera shots you want to do things like change up materials or other things like that down the line. We also didn't want to have yet another technology pop-up window that was floating around in 3ds Max. That being said, we want to make this as easy as possible for anyone who just wants to do a camera sequence and really doesn't know anything about state sets. Right now, that's the kind of approach that I'm going to show you. Basically, we just kind of pop this down here. And if you don't know anything about state sets, or you're not going to even take it any further with state sets, then you certainly don't have to. So in this case, what we're going to do is go in and add our 3 camera shots. To do that, we go down here and click on Add New State twice, and you'll see the new shots come in. I'm just going to double click and rename these. I'll remain in this shot 1, shot 2, and shot 3. And you can see over here we have a couple of things where we can choose our camera. I'm going to just choose camera 1 and click to create a track. You get a default track over there, and do the same thing for camera 2 and camera 3. Now all we have to do is click and drag to move these tracks anywhere in the timeline we want them to be. So I'm just going to stagger them, through the 100 frames so that we can see what we get. Once we stagger them out like this, you can just kind of click and drag, and you can see that as you are scrubbing through the timeline, your cameras will switch and you'll get a nice preview of what's going on. You can also just click and play and get an idea of how that's going to play out in your animation. So that should be pretty straightforward as far as setting up our camera shots right off the bat and getting some feedback here in the viewport. Now what we'd like to do is kind of tune what's going on here. To do that, I might want to decide how long these shots are going to be. And you can easily just click and drag the in and the out points or the middle of these tracks to move them wherever you want. In this case, I'm going to say, I don't know, maybe around 25 or so. I'm going to drag the in point of this over, or out point, and the in point of this over, and we'll see that we get that nice cut in between there. Now, if I want a little more precision there, or I want to save myself some time, one thing I can do is I can select both of these shots at once. So if I have both of them selected just using Control, then where I line up, if they're both on frame 26, I can click and drag the endpoints and they'll drag together. So this gives me a good opportunity to say, okay, well, I wanted this first shot a little bit longer and see it kind of cut in there, or maybe a little bit shorter so that I can kind of try and cut as he's kind of coming back down. And now if I'm happy with that shot, what I can do is kind of just go on to the next one and say, okay, well, as this character is starting to look over, I might want to have the end of my shot kind of be there and really trim to the next shot. So I'll just kind of maybe go to maybe 122 here. And another thing I can do is just double click in the middle and I can type in the start and the end point. So 22, oops, 122. And you can see that we can get this precision there, and I can do the same thing there. I'll set this to be 122, and then we can set up our camera. So as that character is looking back, we have that there. And then we'll just play that back. Now, one nice thing is that as we're in each one of these shots, we're just in these cameras. So, I might say here, as I'm in camera 1, well, I didn't really want this, it could be a little better centered, so I can certainly come and move this camera. And that's going to be something that works for me, and I could do the same here. And I could even animate some things about it. If I want to, I can actually double click, not in the center, but somewhere else in the track, and that's actually going to select the camera for me. So if there's anything that I wanted to do to that particular camera, then I could just double click on the track to select that camera there. So for this one, I might want to go and just do a little bit of animation. I think towards the end, maybe I'll just say around 85. I'm going to turn on auto key, and I'll just do kind of a little nudge, a little hold keyframe there to kind of nudge that in. And then let's go up to the end and let's just zoom in on this character's face right before he cuts. So we have this, we kind of pause in, we zoom in on that camera, and then we kind of cut off to here. So that's something that we're going to want to maybe have this camera zoomed in. So I might just double click on this camera to select it, just so I know what I have. And if I want, I could make a position, rotation, and scale, but I'm going to kind of be adjusting some things like the focal distance and things like that. So I'm going to dolly it in. So we're looking at our character here. Then I'm going to copy that keyframe, basic Mac stuff, to here. As we go all the way towards the end, we'll probably give it some frames, maybe there at 120. Let me zoom out so I get this nice heroic pose at the end right before he kind of settles into it. Okay, now I've done some animation for each one of those cameras to maybe improve it slightly. And you can see those there. Certainly much more tweaking that can be done and things of that nature, but if you want to just go in and make a simple camera sequence, you can make as many shots as you want. This is basically the real easy approach to doing that. No real additional state sets knowledge needed necessarily to do that. Just hop into the sequencer and here are all your shots. Okay, so how do we render these out? Let's take a look. We can go in to our render dialog, just choose active time segment if we wish, and then save these out. So I'm going to go in and just save this under render output to camavix.png, and I've saved them all out there. Actually, I think I'm going to switch my renderer just to do a quick preview. So for a preview, I'm going to use Quicksilver because that's going to be a really easy renderer, and it's going to render quick. It's going to show me exactly what I get in the viewport. And I'm going to set the iterations very, very low, just to the bottom, which is at 1. So now, if I want to, I can just close that out, and I can go over into our sequencer under the States menu, and I can say Render All States. And this is going to render through all of our cameras and states in sequence. Let me just pop that up. Okay, so we'll see all those coming through here. We go from state to state and we get a nice preview of each one. Because we're using such a low iteration rate, we're getting real fast feedback, but it's more about the animation and the camera cuts that we're really interested in here. As far as the quality, we're going to worry about that a little later. Okay, so now that we've run through our quick preview here, let's go check it out in the RAM player. So I'll go into Compare Media and RAM Player. We'll double click here to load that up. We can see that load in. And we can get a quick playback. So here is our camera sequence. Kind of zoom in, get the cut there, zoom back out for the final pose. And if we want to tweak that, we can certainly tweak that. Now, of course, there are many things that you can do in here if you want to go in to state sets workflows and change objects or hide things or change materials or do different render elements and outputs and passes. And those are all available to you. But if you just want to do a basic quick camera sequence, then this is how you go about it. One thing to note is that when we do go into the camera sequence view here, one or two things has been done in order to accommodate that. We wouldn't want people to record different things that they do while you're in a state, so the record button has been brought back. So if you did want to do some things like, let's say we were in this state and for whatever reason we didn't want this teapot there, you just go and you click on record in that particular shot. You go down to that teapot. You can hide it and click off record. And that just, like I said before, prevents us from not recording stuff that we didn't want to while we're in the sequencer view, because it could be a problematic area. See, when we go to the next shot, that teapot happens to be there. So if there are things that we wanted to change or update in the scene, if we wanted to render some different shots or different passes with different materials, those are definitely all things that we could do. Finally, I did want to show a little bit about the UI here and adjusting it for your playback and what you see and what you don't. We have a simple 3 shots here. You may have 20 or 30 of them, in which case you can, just like we adjusted this black bar here, you can adjust this black bar up and down, and you will get a scroll bar if you have many more. So if I scroll down here, you can see the little scroll bar will appear if we make it a little bit smaller. So if you have some tracks there, you'll get a little scroll bar for them. And you also have a little collapse option here. So if you want to collapse this, then it'll collapse down. You'll still get the preview like we did before. If you want to bring that back, you can just pop it back up and you can collapse it there. One other thing that, while I'm here, you notice is as we're kind of going through, as we kind of click through, although I have some pretty good playback here all the way through, I'd say it's pretty much real time. I do notice a little bit of hesitation, which some other people have noticed while I'm in the modify panel. And of course, that's because as we go from camera to camera or thing to thing, this tends to update. If you want to make sure that you get the smoothest of playbacks, then you can go into the command panel, create panel, and make sure that you're not getting any refresh there from that modify panel. Finally, if we bump this out of sequencer mode, that's a-okay. We'll still have all of our states, and you can come in and out of them as you wish. If you wanted to record things like stuff for the compositor view or anything else, you could certainly do that in here if you wanted to make a bunch of more passes. And nothing's lost when we go back into the sequencer mode. All of your sequences are there, which is nice. One last thing I did want to note is if we pop out here, you'll see that when Max changes its viewport configuration, you may want to change which view happens to be previewing and what it happens to be looking like. So you could certainly do that. If this wasn't the view that you wanted to use, you could pick any other view. So if we wanted it to be this bottom one, you can go here and say assign current view to the camera, or if you wanted it to be this top one, you could certainly do that and say assign current camera viewport. As it is, the default view is really just the one that you have chosen when you start creating any sort of camera sequences in here. Okay, well, I hope that's a good introduction for you into the camera sequencer. I hope that it helps you in your productions and creating different camera shots for your animations in 3ds Max. Thank you very much.